It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222, your emails at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. For about a year now, we have been covering the major dysfunction going on at LA County Probation. That is the department that handles people who are on probation, who are on parole, who are on ankle monitors. But they're also, at the same time, the department that handles the juvenile justice system and the juvenile detention facilities, most notably Los Padrinos in Downey and Barry J. Nydorf in Sylmar. And there's been a lot of problems going on at these facilities, whether it's the overdose crises, it's the violence, not just from inmates against other inmates, but inmates against employees. There has become a major staffing crisis at LA County Probation because there's a whole lot of people that don't feel safe showing up for work. So they're either out on disability, taking early retirement, calling out sick, and there's a whole lot of reasons why. One of the reasons is a lot of the employees get held over. So imagine this, you were scheduled for an 8-hour shift, and when you start that shift and you're going into a facility, you have to turn in your phone. You have no way of contacting the outside world because you're in a prison. Well, if the person who's supposed to take over you in the next shift doesn't show up, leadership says you can't go home and you can't tell your family anything. Yeah. That would make me want to look for another line of work. And there have been a lot of issues that were supposed to be addressed by the Board of Supervisors declaring a state of emergency at LA County Probation. And that state of emergency was going to improve the hiring process, make the hiring process faster, and make sure there's less turnover. Well, one of the things they wanted to do, not only to speed up the process, was to incentivize people with bonuses and spend a whole bunch of money on hiring campaigns. And none of it's really worked because the underlying conditions at those facilities persist. And the people working there continue to call out to go on disability or to straight up give up their 30 and retire early, because it is so dangerous in there. Well, today was Progress Report Day, or should I say, yesterday was Progress Report Day, as the LA County Board of Supervisors got an update on how the hiring is going, and it's not going great. Let's hear what Catherine Barger had to say to the official that showed up, a woman named Sheila, because the chief for probation can't be there because he's worried about a court case where he has to testify because this department is being sued into receivership by the state. Every aspect of this is a mess. And let me just say, for every person involved in LA County Probation, I'm so lucky I don't have to do what you do. What has to be done with dealing with the worst aspects of life when it comes to, think about yourself. Think about when you were a teenager, and you're a law-abiding citizen, but when you were a teenager, you were probably a monster. How do I know that? Because we all were. All teenagers are monsters. Now imagine being a teenager and being a violent felon. Yeah. Imagine having to be the people that have to deal with them, and thanks to policies from the Board of Supervisors and the Probation Oversight Commission and the Care First Jails Last initiative, you don't have a way to defend yourself or have a way to discipline the violent offenders. And then, of course, let's not forget who is in these facilities, because you're thinking to yourself, wait, LA County, they let everybody out. And there's a few reasons for that. One is the more people that are in these facilities, the more the county is liable for anything that happens to the people in those facilities, whether it's violent or, let me just say, worse. Let's hear what Catherine Barger has to say as she gets fed up in the middle of this presentation about how much better the hiring is going, which it's not.
The chief is of the opinion that more stringent we are in terms of those that we pass, those that we deem qualified, a much more successful candidate that we'll have at the end of the process, and hopefully those that we are able to retain because we are struggling with some retention issues.
By the way, just a small percentage of applicants pass the background, and then a percentage of them go on to the academy. Some of them pass, and a large percentage quit in the first year.
I'm sorry, what is your retention issue? I mean, what is the percentage right now?
So you'll see it's one of the slides going further. We did it based on numbers rather than a percentage, but it's one of the slides further in the presentation.
Okay.
Because the percentage makes it look worse. I think, let's say they hired 50 people and 20 quit in the first year. That's a pretty bad retention rate. So
turnover, Supervisor Barger, this is the slide that reflects our turnover rate. As you can see, that number has decreased. We had somewhat of a steady between 23 and 24. And right now, during the first 3 quarters of 2025, we've only lost 20 applicants.
Only. So 20 people that decided in the last year to join this department went through the hiring process, went through the background check, went through the academy, got onto the job, and within 1 year said, oh, hell no, I'm not doing this every day. I don't care how much that bonus is.
Do you do an exit interview?
Yes, we do. We do an exit interview. We collect the reasons that folks provide. Obviously, it's done on a volunteer basis, and so not everyone participates in the process, but we do track that information.
What is the reason? What's the number one reason, would you say?
Why are so many people who sign up for this work quitting?
The number, it was people leaving to go to other county jobs, people leaving due to working conditions, people leaving because they're moving out of state. It's a long list of things, but what I can do for you is get you the ones that are the most high.
Wouldn't that be an important part to put in the presentation? Hey, here's all the people that quit after a year, and here's why. Then we can figure out what we're doing wrong. Because already you're talking about a hiring process where from the first application to you being on the job takes about a year. And that's a long, hellish process to go through to after a year saying, no, this was a terrible idea.
That we have control over. I can't control someone leaving the state. But
right.
Working conditions, I'd be curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and this is what's so funny is, and the union is to blame here, management is to blame here, and everybody's to blame. But the on staff, the people that have to work in these facilities, Los Padrinos, Barry Nydorf, what have you, their stories are never told in these presentations. The violence that has been put upon them, the violence when they're trying to break up fights between other inmates. And let's again remember the makeup of this crowd. Because these facilities, which there's not that many people in them, I think you combine both facilities, maybe there's 300 in a county of 10 million. These are the 300 that didn't qualify for any of the Care First Jails Last Initiative's diversion programs. None of them. Because they are that dangerous. And even though you assume, okay, it's juvenile hall, we're talking about 12 and 13-year-olds, thanks to 4 years of our former district attorney, George Gascon, who refused to try juveniles as adults, you have people who are 18, 19, 20, going all the way up to 26 when they age out the facility, who are either awaiting trial or serving sentences for unbelievably violent crimes. We're talking about a whole lot of gang members. Now, you've got a whole bunch of people who have a lot of rage, a lot of aggression, more rage and aggression than your average teenager. What are we doing to try to change their behavior? What are we doing to try to, get them on the right path. Once we have them in these facilities, how are we rehabilitating them? Well, according to Supervisor Catherine Barger, we're just not.
I'm gonna start off, and this doesn't have to do with recruiting, but one of the frustrations I have, and I know that the request was to continue this matter, but I want to find out what programming is taking place at Barry Nydorf and who's doing the programming, and then I want
programming meaning what are the educational classes or the field activities? What are you doing to these people outside of them sitting in their room, where some of them have gotten drugs and for some of the worst reasons possible? I think I mentioned this story, but it's worth repeating. Did you know that LA County's juvenile facilities have a no hugging rule? And the reason they have a no hugging rule is because a few years ago at Barry J. Nydorf in Sylmar, a mother hugged her son in visitation, passed him fentanyl, and he OD'd the next day. Seriously, these are some of the worst problems in the world. The things that the people who work in these facilities have to deal with, none of them are paid enough. And then you top it on the fact that because the staffing shortages are so light and because of the rules and restrictions placed on the officers, they're kind of defenseless. I'm sure that it's no fun to get pepper sprayed, but it sure seems to be effective when you're stopping somebody from violently attacking someone, whether that's another inmate or an officer. But what have we done at these facilities? Banned the officers from using pepper spray. So now they have less tools to be able to restrain incredibly violent. And again, we are not talking about small children. We're talking about teenagers and adults. You can be in these facilities till you're 26.
And then I want to see if it's actually happening. And because I'm hearing that time and time again, even programs that we ask for, Sheila, whomever it is that the gatekeeper out there is not doing their job. And I'm just going to tell you that. Okay. And if they want to...
This is so interesting, just the way this whole system works. I mean, the fish rots at the top. Not only is the chief a mess, and the county board of supervisors, they have had chances over and over again to fire the chief, but they don't, because then they're the ones that own all of this. If they can just keep saying that leadership there is a failure, it's not on them. But even every directive that they have, their protocols are not being followed. Their rules are not being followed. We are budgeting for educational programs and other nonprofits and what have you. And if they're not actually going there, doesn't anyone want to ask why?
Okay. And if they want to come down here and dispute me on it, I have the facts to back up what I'm saying. So I'm asking that we collectively, you, me, Guillermo, go out there.
Okay.
And check it out.
We're going to go once a week. All of you leadership, you're going to go see all the things that are not being done at these facilities.
Because when I was out there and I see kids watching TV.
Wait, they get TV? That doesn't seem right.
On a beautiful day, when they should be outside, being able to recreate. And when I ask why not, it's because there's no programming in place. It makes my blood boil.
But then why? If we're budgeting for outdoor basketball, outdoor soccer, football, why isn't it being administered? Could it be that it is not safe for the service providers? If it's not safe for the probation officers, it's definitely not safe for the nonprofits, the legit ones. I'm not talking about the illegitimate ones like the tutor that got caught sneaking in drugs to Los Padrinos earlier this year.
Understand.
And especially since I know this has been and believe me, I'm not shooting the messenger because I know you are here and I appreciate you being here, but I'm calling it out now because I've sat back and tried to allow the system to fix itself, because I figured that if a supervisor witnessed it, they would fix it. Silly me. And that in and of itself makes me nervous as well, because if they know that we know, what else don't we know that they're doing that we may not be able to see?
We've created a situation where housing incredibly violent people with not a whole lot of options to restrain them, because juvenile court works way different than adult court. And there are all kinds of restrictions placed on these officers that it is not safe for the officers to be there, which is why they're calling out. And even though we are budgeting and paying for tutoring and after school programs and all this other stuff, education, actual schooling in these facilities, they can't take place because it's too dangerous.
So I'm just calling out.
This is a mess, and I hope receivership happens. But I think we told you the guy that they're looking to appoint to take over and be the receiver for LA County Probation, he's a 40-year veteran of juvenile departments all across the country. And he said when he walks into Los Padrinos, he's scared. We're talking about the people that actually don't get diverted, the people that don't get released into the community and go to all the nonprofits that we have in the Care First world. We're talking about the worst of the worst, the most violent, and at this point, they've got free reign of these facilities, and nobody wants to admit the truth. 800-222-KABC is the phone number, 1-800-222-5222. Sit back, relax, because I've got a lot more sound from this supervisors meeting as the supervisors complain about all the failings of a department that they've been fixing for years. 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're going through yesterday's LA County Board of Supervisors meeting where they had yet another hearing on the ever-worsening crisis in LA County juvenile facilities. The staffing shortages, and now what we're hearing about is even though we're paying for and budgeting programming for these youths, because of the small percentage of them that are incredibly violent that we can't do anything about, that cause problems for everybody, the kids in juvie are just sitting inside watching TV all day, according to Catherine Barger. Before we get back to the sound, let's go to Armando in L.A. Armando, hello.
No one's calling in, I guess, so thank you for taking my call. But, yeah, Barger, and, she's been there for too long. She knows what's going on. But then you have to look at, her predecessor, or not her predecessor, but her colleagues, and then look down, to the mayor. She knows what's going on. And then the LDA, remember the district attorney that we just got rid of? They know what's going on. It's not about, them trying to make the system better. They're just not going to do anything to make it better. They're just sitting there getting their 20-year pension, 60-year pension. That's it. Why should they move forward? That's all they're doing. They're just paperwork. They're not concerned about the juvenile, the young kids that are sitting there not getting anything that's constructive to make them better. They're just worried about, can I get my pension?
Well, I'm sure there's plenty of people in elected office and in county bureaucracy that's all they think about. What's interesting, thanks so much for the call, Armando, is you have a lot of people who work in that probation department that they're a couple of years away from that full pension, and they're choosing to retire early because they don't feel safe at work. And I know there's a lot of litigation that's ongoing about that, but that's so important just to reiterate. The police officers, the probation officers don't feel safe in those facilities. And the staffing shortage got so bad that we pulled all the field deputies who were supposed to check up on people on probation and forced them to work in this facility, which is a completely different job. It is a mess, and a lot of the regulations that this board and past boards and the Care First Jails Last initiative have put forth have made it impossible to deal with the small percentage of incredibly violent inmates at these facilities that cause trouble for everybody. You want to know why there's no youth football at Barry Neidorf? It's because one of the kids would probably kill one of the other kids. Hey, Look at this. 790 KABC welcomes OAR at the Greek Theater on August 8th, 2026. Tickets are on sale Friday at Ticketmaster.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-795-2222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing. When we come back, we'll hear what Supervisor Lindsay Horvath has to say about the ever-going crisis at our juvenile facilities. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222, your emails at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. It's been almost a year that the LA County Board of Supervisors declared an emergency when it comes to the staffing crisis at LA County juvenile facilities. That staffing crisis has persisted despite hiring bonuses and job fairs and everything else because of all the people that apply and make it through the background check process, then go through the academy, graduate, get into the job. Nearly half of them quit within the first year. And why is that? Well, it's because these facilities are incredibly dangerous. And the circle of hell that continues is the more employees that feel unsafe and call out and don't show up, the less safe it is for the employees that do show up and do have to stay over. And then they're the ones that are worried. Why are these facilities so dangerous? It's a few reasons. One, you got to think about that the only people that are actually in one of these facilities are the worst of the worst. And it's not just small kids, because for 4 years, George Gascon refused to try any teenager as an adult, no matter how heinous the crime. So you have murderers in there that can be in there until they graduate at 26. And you have a probation oversight commission appointed by the Board of Supervisors that has put forth policies that mean that there really aren't a whole lot of punishments for bad behavior, even in one of these facilities. And that's including violence against other inmates, and that's including violence against the officers. With all that, let's hear what Lindsay Horvath has to say, as the Board of Supervisors are the maddest I've ever heard them about this. But did anyone get fired over it? Like anyone in upper management that does not have the back of the front of the line employees?
I wish I would see in the presentations a stronger connection between what's happening in the department and what we consider meaningful progress in terms of the care that we want to see provided to our young people. From my understanding, I'm going to start with staffing and hiring. For the depopulation plan to be successful and to bring LP into compliance.
Oh, yeah. So here's one of the other things. So currently, the state board that is made up of a whole bunch of nonprofits that believe in decarceration and abolish the police and all this stuff, like the Youth Justice Coalition, they believe that the facility, Los Padrinos, and the other one, Barry Nydorf, they are constantly not in compliance because staffing levels are too low. The ratio of inmates to employees is not where it needs to be. And so the idea then is, well, if you can't add more employees, because that's almost impossible, you have to reduce the number of inmates. But think about LA County. Think about how loose we are with all kinds of laws, how for so many reasons we don't want people in these facilities. The number one reason for the Board of Supervisors is the liabilities. You want to know why the LA County Board of Supervisors is broke this year? Because they had to settle a $4 billion settlement for all the sexual abuse that's gone on in these facilities over the last 50 years. And then they just did another $280 million settlement, and I'm sure there'll be more and more. So just for liability, the longer anyone is in these facilities could cost a whole lot of money. Whether that violence or that sexual assault was purported by an employee or another inmate, I guess the county's the one responsible because it's our facility and we did not keep them safe. You know, it's probably 90% of these inmates are not outrageously violent, are not acting out, but the 10% that are ruling the roost right now, and there's nothing we can do about that. But again, Think about how where Care First jails last were all about depopulation. The 160 that are at Los Padrinos, the 140 that are at Barry J. Neidorf, if they're not getting depopulated, if every single Care First department looks at this and says, yeah, that person can't go to a nonprofit community diversion program, they can't go into housing, they need to be here, we're talking about the worst of the worst.
For the depopulation plan to be successful and to bring LP into compliance, the population there needed to be reduced to about 175. As of the most recent population reports, even assuming the 51 girls and gender expansive youth in custody are moved to Kilpatrick, which I'll get to.
Gender expansive, never mind.
That leaves you with about 200 young people still at LP, which is more than the depopulation plan projected. Because staffing and recruiting update here shows no significant jump in progress, and the population in the halls and camps isn't going down, it's very clear we're not going to be able to staff our way into compliance. So I will ask what I continue to ask at these presentations: what are we doing to proactively reduce the number of youth in custody?
So Lindsay Horvath's answer to this is, well, we got to get in compliance, whether it's because of different court settlements or the overhang of receivership. We have got to make sure those ratios are in check. And she still thinks that just because they're not releasing the people that are in these facilities. Believe you me, just based on how this county works with our adult incarceration population, you know, if they're not getting released to one of these nonprofit diversion programs, there's a good reason. But of course, the answer is, got to depopulate. We shouldn't even have this. And all the women in there, which I don't know what those 50 girls or gender expansive youth did. But if we're housing girls in these facilities, they did some bad stuff.
So I think as part of the depopulation plan, as the chief indicated, the shifting of youth to the other sites was the initial plan. We're also looking...
Yes, the plan was, okay, you can't get enough people to show up for work at Los Padrinos because it's too dangerous and there's too many kids there. So why don't we take some of them to the other facility, which used to have the same problem, and we just keep shipping them back and forth. This is a failure on every single level. But even the board, who's acting all pissed off and outraged, what have they done outside of declare an emergency and have all of these motions? Have they actually held anyone in leadership accountable for these failures? Have they fired Chief Villaraigosa? No. In fact, he was going to retire, and they said, no, we need you.
We're also looking...
because you're our punching bag.
We're also looking very closely at our intake process and procedures, which we had invited the POC also to join in and determine whether or not we were over-detaining youth that should not be in our care, and that simply is not the case. But we're doing everything
we are not keeping people in these facilities that could safely be put somewhere else. And you know what? For a county as large as Los Angeles, if we've only got 300 little teenage monsters that we have to lock in these facilities, I guess we should consider ourselves lucky. But we have to have a situation where the people working in those facilities, whether it's the tutors, the programming providers, or the officers themselves, need to feel safe to do their jobs. And right now they don't.
But we're doing everything we can on intake, diversion, trying to get youth in various placements where they can be taken. I think we submit a report to the board, I want to say every so often, regarding the efforts to remove youth out of LP to different placements. And placement tends to be where we have our challenges. Some of the facilities where we do house our youth or seek placement are not willing to come and pick them, or the criteria that they're using to avail themselves of our youth, they're not participating in that process. So
yeah, even all the nonprofits that want all of this money to care for these people that should be in these facilities, they know if they take the dangerous ones, then all the people in their nonprofit facility, their unlocked facility. Now they're in danger. It's a real mess. And again, this is like the worst aspects of society, and somebody has to deal with this. And unfortunately, nobody is in a position to deal with this at any level that's working.
It's been a struggle in terms.
This receivership needs to happen, and it needs to happen quickly, but I'm not even convinced that's going to solve the problem.
It's been a struggle in terms of finding placement for the youth. It's been a struggle in terms of reducing the population other than through our intake procedures and whatever diversion efforts that we have.
And, one of the options that has been laid out is, okay, well, you need to depopulate. Maybe you should take the worst of the worst, the incredibly violent ones who we obviously know who they are, the ones that are causing all the problems, and the ones that, are over 18, and maybe they need to go to MCJ. Maybe they need to be transferred to adult court. And enough of this nonsense where because you were 17 when you murdered somebody, your brain's not fully formed. So by 26, I'm sure you'll understand what you did. I don't think so.
For Barry J., the depopulation plan contemplated topping out at around 146 youth. I believe that's on page 7 of the depopulation plan. It's now at about 150. And there have been credible rumors suggesting it will go higher. So what is the population at Barry J currently, and what do you believe its maximum is based on the current staffing capabilities?
Because we're going to get to a real quick point where then that one's going to be out of compliance, and then we got to move them all somewhere else, that little camp in Malibu.
Well, the goal of the depopulation plan was to have a target of 150. However, we cannot obviously control the number of youth that we have in our care and custody. So the numbers that you see reflected in the depopulation plan was that it was a point in time. But during the summertime, that's when we see a significant increase in the number of youth that come into custody. Because they're out of school, we see another decline once school begins.
It's because the kids aren't going to summer school. It's that we don't have enough after-school programs that they're getting in all kinds of trouble.
So we're always going to have that ebb and flow and dynamics with respect to the number of youth in our care. But the target number at Barry J was 150. The site can actually house more, but as you mentioned, we're still struggling with our staff. And so that will be a challenge to ensure we have a sufficient number of staff to cover the youth that are housed there.
This is probably draconian, and this is definitely unconstitutional. But sometimes when you hear about how awful the kids are in these facilities, you're like, one of the things we should do is make sure that the parents of these little monsters can no longer procreate.
So what would you say, given that you just acknowledged that there can be more youth at that site, do you anticipate there being more? And if so, how many?
Yeah, we would. So once again, yes, there is going to.
Of course there's going to be more. Especially now that we have a DA that is willing to enforce the law. That's another thing. The population has been going up because Nathan Hochman is enforcing laws. And when you bust up all of these retail theft rings, they're using a whole bunch of juveniles. And that's something that the gangs do because the juveniles, well, they go through a different court system. And they're subject to different levels of punishment. And even the worst of the worst are only in there till they're 26. We'll continue with this nonsense because it does not get covered enough, but we're going to cover it here as the LA County Board of Supervisors starts pulling their hair out at the dysfunction that they take no responsibility for at our juvenile detention facilities. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. Let's go to Mike in LA. Mike, hello.
Hi, I've worked with special children at all my life, my career in teaching here in Los Angeles, and boys particularly with attitudinal behavior difficulties. And my particular sport is gymnastics. And you can't run a facility without firing people. And that means the city council also.
Oh, no, you're totally right about that. Nobody
Right.
in leadership gets fired over this. The Board of Supervisors, with all their failures of this nonsense, have not gotten kicked out of office for this. And specifically, you look at your line of work over the last few years, where we've taken away all kinds of punishments, whether it's suspensions, what have you, expulsions, because we don't want to lose attendance money. Violent children are actually
Right.
rewarded in certain schools.
It's the lack of supervision by the superintendent. The superintendent of the school system has to be on top of things so that people get removed and new people get put in place. You can't just keep thinking that the person you hired is going to change. That just doesn't happen all the time. There's times when that happens, but more often than not, you replace me. You don't just keep giving me a second, third, or forever chances, to get better.
Oh, yeah, but when it comes to some of these public employee unions, thanks so much for the call, Mike. That's exactly what we see. You look at the union that represents these workers at the facilities. Are they preventing them from getting injured on the job and having to go on disability? No, but I guarantee when one of them gets accused of sexual assault, well, they'll make sure to defend that one, just like we've seen with the teachers' unions. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. Thank you for spending this hour with me as we go through an issue that does not get nearly enough coverage. It's funny because we're talking about 300 people that are causing so many problems, and whether it's the problems they inflict on each other, the problems that are inflicted to them, the problems that are inflicted to the probation officers, this one department is why the county's broke. This one department cost in a settlement when they decided to, in the state, lift the statute of limitations on all kinds of violent assaults and sexual assaults, which are awful, but it opened up the county to so much liability that, honestly, I'm betting you right now, the supervisors, even though these people are dangerous, and there are so many people saying you can't depopulate these, the 300 here are dangerous. You cannot depopulate them. Part of them wants to just because no more lawsuits. The county would probably love if a receiver comes in and the state takes over, because then they're not liable for this department, but they probably still will be. But the fact that you have so much grandstanding from Barger and from Horvath, and we didn't even play the Janice Hahn sound, but they still haven't fired the head chief after all of the disappointment over the years, it's because then it becomes their problem. If they fire the chief, then all of a sudden, whoever they replace it with, it's on them. They keep this guy, well, they can keep using it as a punching bag, but it's a mess. I'm so glad I don't have to deal with this because we're talking about the worst aspects of society. And, well, there you go. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.